ahead, the hometown heroes. Coup will get themselves the ace, will get themselves the base, and will earn themselves a shot at the Summoners Cup in Berlin against SK Telecom.
Good evening and welcome to the final edition of Worlds Tonight for this season, coming to you from the Brussels Expo in Belgium. I'm here with Freak and Deficio to break down a little bit of today's series as well as look forward to the finals next week. So let's get into it. Our series today against Fnatic and Coup, we've said it before, 3-0s in the semifinals, but they looked much closer, or were rather much closer than that scoreline speaks to.
Well, before we talk about how close it was, I just want to say thank you, Europe, for your solidarity. NA ended their tournament 0-10. I'm glad UK ended the tournament 0-6. So I'm glad we've all had our great auspicious exits to Worlds.
Didn't even leave time for that wound to heal.
Because now we can go into what was positive about it and start
immediately, my friend.
Super rough day. And 2 days, I guess, for Europe right here. I definitely expected a lot more from Fnatic. Not from Origin. Against SK Telecom, it was kind of like, okay, this should be a 3-0, 3-1 maybe. But Fnatic, I think a lot of people looked at it and said, these guys could win this game.
Yeah, I would argue that the majority of people would have considered them a favorite coming into this matchup.
Yeah, I would
I don't have any hard numbers on that, but I would feel comfortable saying that the majority of people would have called them the favorite. And the way they came out in game one definitely spoke to that. I mean, they had a commanding lead in the middle of that game.
I mean, that's the funny thing, right? Is like, game one kind of went the way sort of both teams end up playing League of Legends. Coup gets behind early on a lot, and like that's normal for them, and they still are really good despite the sort of good tendency to have early game deficits. And of course, props to Coup for coming back onto it. And that was like, you know, I saw like half of that happening, right? I was like, yeah, you know, I expect Fnatic to get an early lead, then I expect Coup to start fighting back. But in my mind, you talked about Fnatic being a favorite. It's like, but Fnatic should be smart enough to not toss that lead away.
Very true.
And, you know, they still let Coup in.
I mean, that's the entire story here, how Fnatic, and I think the Western teams, not just Fnatic, Origin, take the NA teams, whatever, they're not consistently good enough in the calls they're making in game. So they will always leave an opening. Even if they can be 10,000 gold ahead, there will be an opening.
Yeah.
And that's what some of these elite Korean teams can punish. SKT can do it, Coup Tigers can do it, and that's why you don't win a best out of 5 against them.
Another minor and nitpicky thing for me is the fact that the Koreans were able to pick up Fiora so much quicker and to such a greater degree than any of the other teams. When you look across the board, look at our bracket stages, who were the 3 players who picked up Fiora and really became threats? Someday, Marin, and Smeb.
Let's look at it this way. I was thinking, I was German all the time.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about Huni and the practice he's getting in Europe, like the top laners he's facing in Europe. So how can Huni improve? He's been playing, there's been some good top laners like Source, like Caboshot and so on, but it's also been a mix of weaker top laners who's not at an international level. Compare that to what the Korean top laners are playing against, because they have like 5-6 elite top laners over there like Smeb, Marin, Someday and so on and so on. These guys will get the top practice, so when new champions do come out and they play against each other, or just over the year how they can improve, get better and better, it's easier for them. Yeah. And I wonder how a guy like Huni can ever catch up if the competition he's playing against in his own region is not at the same level.
Personally, I don't think it's like individual player-wise, because like 80% of the S-tier players in Korea went to China, right? Like all of Samsung White and Samsung Blue went to China, right? Like by that metric, like all the Chinese players should be the very best players.
How many top laners went to China that you would say these guys will be the absolute lead?
But even still, right? Like even still, you've got players like Bengi and Hojin who are like straight up better than Clearleft, and Clearleft got to play against Dandy. Okay, Dandy's a top laner now. They did some weird stuff over in China, right? But like, look how much better Bang was playing than Imp and everyone else. Like, even though his best opponent is Prey, like, and yet look how good these players are.
I'm purely looking top lane.
Yeah. And that is a whole nother conversation, the conversation of the Koreans who went to China, and then we saw China's performance at this tournament was, you know, far beneath what we had assumed it was going to be. You know, but I also, too, to your point, you know, Korea as a region coming into the tournament was already fairly practiced in funneling gold into their top laners, as well as being higher percentage of their team's damage share.
Right.
So the fact that the meta did fall that way for Worlds, you know, was definitely advantageous. Yeah. Back to today's series, though, looking at Coup and also looking forward, you know, we've hit it time and time again. Smeb, player of the series now 2 series in a row. This guy is a monster, but is, you know, one single entity, one individual who plays relatively consistently and supplies as he did in this series today, 30% of his team's damage. Is that enough to take on a Titan like SKT in the finals?
Well, if you consider the fact he will face a top laner who's doing almost the same for SK Telecom, no, it shouldn't be enough, because these guys should even each other out unless one guy can get the edge and outplay the other guy. And that's always been a problem for KOO Tigers. Is like SKT can match them, first of all, when it comes to top lane. And then KOO Tigers plays this style where they wait for you to make the mistake and then they punish you very often, the more passive early game. SK Telecom is the team who makes the least amount of mistakes of probably any team we have here at Worlds. And that's one of the reasons SK Telecom never really fall behind or get into these situations where they can lose the game against KOO Tigers. So we might see a team like KOO Tigers go back to the group stage and be like, we need to change something up. We need to be aggressive early on to try and match them there if we want to beat them. I'm not sure what they will change, but it could be a strategy for at least one game.
Yeah, it seemed like group stage KOO had been able to suss out specific tendencies in teams like CLG and know how to attack them early on. And if KOO can suss out what SKT does and find early game plans, then that's really good for them. But SKT basically never lose with a lead. and trends are SKT's gonna get a lead and they almost never throw that away. So that's gonna be a really tough situation for KOO.
Now backtrack with me for a second, because I jumped ahead of myself and my thinking.
Great.
Fnatic, I want to close out on them. Again, top 4, fantastic finish for especially a young team, and we talked about it in the post game there. When you do look across that board, Huni, Reignover, Febiven, and the length that the team has been together, as well as the strength of those players and their potential to grow, I think that as much as it is painful for a team to get knocked out of the World Championship, they should be looking ahead with, heads high, saying next year we can come right back in with World's experience up to this level and actually perform when it matters.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly a team that deserved top 4. These guys had the hard side of the bracket, right? Edward Gaming in the first side, 3-0'd them. That's really solid, did well in their group, everything. So, yeah, Fnatic, I think, super deserve this top 4. I think they are clearly a top 4 team in the world. This is very good. Europe's best, obviously, all this stuff. So, yeah, very strong. Unfortunately, in this series, they had more casualties than a laid-back drink shop. So, quick tons of damage for everyone there. But,
Had to do it.
Had to put it out there. I'm glad you brought us back to the Fnatic game.
We can't go a full 15 minutes without a pun job.
That has to come out there. I'm glad you brought us back there. But yeah, it's just look, they were good. I don't want to bring up the storyline of they brought a new lineup together, because almost every team at Worlds brought a new lineup together. Origin was new. All the Chinese teams were new. Okay, they're one of many teams to do this. But yeah, among many top-tier teams, they came together pretty quickly. Good for them there. And now we get to see if they can grow fast.
Yeah, and I think what we get to see now is hopefully that Europe as a region, because what they need now is not another, I guess another team like Fnatic would help. Origin is trying their best to beat that other team. They were very close in the spring final. But what Europe needs now is all the teams around Fnatic to kind of evolve as well. Like Fnatic did, like Origin has done this split here. H2K trying, also a very young team coming in. Not the same infrastructure as the 2 other teams. But that's what we need now for Europe as a region, so that the competition among 6 teams maybe is very, very even. Instead of Fnatic going undefeated at first and then almost falling to Origin, so it's 2 teams fighting in the end. We need more teams to join in there, because that's what we see in other regions, especially Korea, where even though SK Telecom this year was super dominant.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much I buy that. No. SKT crushing everyone and still being this.
Let's remove SK Telecom. then
let's remove the case that doesn't back up my hypothesis.
Right.
Yeah, and then we'll move forward.
Okay, let's backtrack a little bit. At least
this is good to fish show.
The point I was trying to make.
Top laners. I'm not talking about SKT.
No, you were wrong on that one.
Let's find out.
So,
let's figure this out.
Basically, my point is that KOO Tigers come in as a team who is obviously not at the level SKT is at when we look at the season. Yet they become the second best team in the world right now. So what you need is, again, remove SK Telecom. You need that group of people, because KOO Tigers were very even with KT and so on. There's a lot of teams fighting for those last few spots. You need that group in Europe if you want the entire region to get better, and a team like Fnatic and Origin and so on to take that next step and become possibly the best team in the world.
Well, they've got the offseason to figure that out, and then hopefully they can challenge each other, and who knows what will happen in the offseason, won't even begin. Now, back over to the finals that we have. Going into today, we looked at Febiven and Kuro, and a lot of people are saying, well, that's a tilted matchup in favor of Febiven. Very strong mid laner. In the top lane, it was the Smeb versus Huni, maybe tilting towards Smeb. Well, now you've got Kuro going up against FLICKR in the mid lane, pending any decisions about whether or not EasyHoon is playing. But I was actually pleasantly surprised by Kuro's performance today. I thought that of the players that we had deemed as a weak link on the KOO Tigers, he definitely stepped up with his play.
I would say he got beat up in lane a lot, kind of as expected. I mean, Q aren't great landers,
Right,
really.
when
in the first anyway.
you're playing Veigar into Azir.
But I mean, like, you know, he last bit casted and okay, that's not ever going to give him a great lane matchup, but like he got bullied around by the LeBlanc pretty hard over in game 1. But yeah, the dude mopped up team fights super well. He did it in the quarterfinal against KT, super good at roaming down to the fights and doing good things. And yeah, Kuro was a mid-game monster for his last, 6-7 games here. This guy's been absolutely great. And, assuming this early game survives for Ku, then he can go and try to match EasyHoon or FLICKR in mid-game rotations and getting in team fights. I think it's possible. Kuro's a good player.
I mean, that's how it's going to be for Ku Tigers. You're not going to win in the laning phase against SK Telecom.
Right.
And as a team, I mean, outside of Smep, who's the only carry on this team, we look and say, this guy can win his lane. Bottom lane and mid lane lost almost every single lane matchup, like in terms of farm.
Yeah.
But then as a team, they could make way better plays than Fnatic could, and that's what they use, and that's what they need to use against SK Telecom.
Now let me ask you a question that I asked Monty, Christo, and Kobe yesterday, and they were unable to answer it, so maybe you can show them up
42.
Here. He did it. The show's over. No, I asked them, and I don't know if there's an answer to this. FLICKR's Rise in the mid lane.
Yeah.
He's pulled it out, I think, 4 times so far this tournament to great success every time, and it seems like people are absolutely clueless as to how to play against that. So the first question is there a viable counter that you guys can think of that a team should be looking to pull out against a Rise?
I don't think necessarily it's a specific champion. I think more team compositions against Rise.
Okay.
I mean, Rise is a mid laner who needs his ulti to wave clear. So I've always liked running like siege comps and so on into Rise because he's obviously fairly locked down, sitting there trying to clear the wave with his ulti, which means his team fighting power goes down if he ever uses that, and you play around poking him out and the fact he doesn't have that reliable wave clear. Because I think he's a very safe pick in terms of his laning phase. He can very often just sit back and farm with Q if it is a terrible lane match for him or he falls behind. So there are a lot of ways you can play the Rise safely. So I think it's more team composition wise, you gotta try and play around it and don't play into what he's good at. He's good at melee champions who runs at him.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I pop my ulti, spam, 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 you can never move, you're dead.
Well, gold star for
Don't
you
play that
because that's more than Monty gave me. He gave me, there is no answer.
Yeah, that's well, Monte Cristo is like, he's Korean, nothing can be done. Oh my God. And for once, actually, Koreans only got knocked out by Koreans this world, so
That's
now Monty
true.
gets to be like really happy about himself. But breaking down Rise, so FLICKR's already running deep utility, he's got plenty of movement speed there, he's running Ghost, so a few things to point out. His 1v1 is probably one of the best in the game, as Rise, right?
Yeah.
Point and click route that happens about for 75% of the 1v1 with a self shield. You are not going to 1v1 him at any champion of the game. I think pretty much there's literally 0 of them that's going to work out. But he's not running TP because he's running Ghost. So if you're able to wave clear and peace out and make TP plays, that's great. But that's not TF because TF can't get away from the Rise, right? You have to pick a matchup where you can survive and then get out. Or if you can get the ward control, right? If FLICKR's not allowed to have wards up on both sides, like if FLICKR isn't able to track Hojin, if he goes for the all-in and burns Ghost and runs forward and pops W and pops R, you're now overextended, can be turned around on, Rek'Sai comes in from behind you. So preventing, instilling the fear of a counter gank at all times prevents the all-in, or proactively wave clear TP out and affect the map in other ways. Rise is a 1v1 god.
I'd like to see Orianna being picked into Rise a little bit. I think Orianna is one of these champions who use very little mana and wave clearing, and because she can contest Rise in the early game when it comes to the early trades with move the ball and then auto attack, she has some of the best auto attacks. Obviously, you're not looking for that all-in as the Orianna. You can push him into his tower, and you're still safe enough, I feel, that you don't get all in. If you do, you have a shockwave defensively, you have your own movement speed to kind of get out of that situation, and then have a team again that's built around being able to group on the Rise and put pressure on him when he can't really wave clear properly, or he can't get to that melee champion. Because right now, he's still picking it into comps where people are like, okay, I will play Fiora and I will run at him. Oh, I can't move, I'm dead. That's not gonna work.
All right, well, that's plenty for the teams to mull over in the next week as they prepare for our finals. It's time to say goodbye to this beautiful venue here in Brussels, this beautiful stage, and the beautiful fans that joined us. We will see you next week in Saturday for our all-Korean finals, SKT versus the Ku Tigers. Good night.
Good night.
Advance to Berlin for the chance to battle SKT. Onslaught of Shadow splits everyone from Ku away. Everyone come back. 2 for 1. Featherman wants to clean up. It's a trouble for Smith. One step closer to an all-Korean final. Smith flashes away from the third block of the broken wings. Huni will find fails the flash. jumps forward. He manages to find another as Smeb's running down Feathervin. And Coup Tigers are 2-0 against Fnatic. Gorilla comes forward, the Shockwave finds 4, there's simply not enough ability power. Yellow Star and Rainover, like lambs to the slaughter. Hooney's trampled underneath the weight of that power pony. Reckless is in trouble, the Shockwave's already been pulled. Coup will earn themselves a shot at the Summoners Cup in Berlin against SK Telecom.